All right. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. So good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching live or listening on one of the podcast platforms later on, however it is that you're checking out this episode, really appreciate you for taking the time to be here. It truly means the world to me. So thank you so much. And today it's round two with Chad Johnson.
Yeah,
Chad,
dude.
how you doing, brother?
I'm good. It's nice to have had round one, have to have survived round one and
We
diving
made it.
into round two. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, how's your life, man? How crazy are things right now? Just as things are starting to, I guess, zero in on getting
Yeah.
closer, final months here before Furnace Fest
Yeah,
and all
it's
that.
I
How's
was
everything?
yeah, thanks. I appreciate you asking. I was walking our 8-month-old puppy this morning with my wife and I was just kind of complaining to her because she's does such an incredible job of listening to my
Yeah,
complaining. It's I know she loves it too, but it I was just
love it.
telling her, how it feels like we're in that final um I don't even know if it's like we're not in the eye of the storm. We're just kind of like
Mm,
in the storm or maybe about to be in the storm of really what's like the 90-day pre-festival
mm,
takeoff. And it right from right here, it feels in full transparency, it feels very chaotic. It feels really kind of like loose. Like you just don't know how it's all going to come together. There's still so many moving parts and missing pieces that it's hard to envision a complete I don't know, like kind of presentation. And
yeah,
yet somehow in
yeah.
the next 100 and some days it will all take shape. And I just got to keep, man, I got to keep praying. I got to keep giving it, surrendering it to God, and entrusting the whole thing to Him, because yeah, that's my only strategy that's
Yeah.
that's gonna win in the end.
No, man, that's a good strategy. It's like
Yeah,
it's like it doesn't always make sense, right? It's like the Lord instructing Israel to send out their harp players and stuff into battle first.
right. Yeah, it's like
But
there's not a whole lot of common sense there from a
yeah.
at least from a modern cultural perspective. So, um, or maybe even from an ancient cultural perspective. But
Yeah, I
either
don't think it
either
made
way,
sense to
it's
them either,
yeah,
but
right, right.
there's no
But
way
I
this is a good
feel
idea, God, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I feel thankful. Last year was originally just meant to be a one-off, and I feel really
Mm,
thankful to have this opportunity to go again. And yeah, a little overwhelming, but that's
yeah.
kind of comes with the territory.
So
Yeah,
just before we jump into some stuff, man, I wanted to get into some stuff that we didn't really get a chance to talk about last time, which is kind of involved with your little bit more of your background. I'm super interested to know about how you got started on this whole journey with Jesus and the work that you've done in missions and with there's a lot of things that we could talk about. But before we jump into that kind of stuff, are there any updates or anything like that on Furnace Fest that I know last time you were here there was still a little bit of mystery
yeah,
shrouding Furnace Fest, and since then we've had the reveal of Sunny Day Real Estate, which is like
yeah.
pretty incredible. And anything else that I know I don't. I'm again not trying to get you in trouble or anything,
No,
but is
no,
there
no, no trouble, no
anything going
trouble
on that we
required.
need to talk about?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess I'll say this to you just because I feel like I'm having a conversation with a friend. That one of the interesting ways that a festival comes together, or at least it did last year, was that we had so many shifts in artists kind of lineup, sort of. I don't know how it all came together. Like the
Yeah.
last few months, because of COVID, quite a few artists were not able to join in, and so then it just meant we were scrambling to find replacements. And while I have no reason to anticipate that same kind of dilemma this time around, because we're in such a different space, thankfully. And um I just, yeah, I don't envision that. But I have what
Hmm.
I'm kind of the blessing in disguise from that season is that it kind of allowed us an opportunity to be to even though it was on one hand disappointing, it was also like a hey, surprise, there's like a new band. And in some cases, people were at least some people were thankful that the band they got was, was stronger maybe than the one that couldn't make it, and
Yeah,
I won't say which ones those were,
sure.
but there were definitely some times. So I've been thinking between us, I've been thinking, and everyone listening, about, do we consider a few last minute surprises, which as of right now are not, that's not even on the table. So we're done, where the lineup's done. There's nothing like other than me just kind of like thinking about it. So I guess we'll find out. What do you think? Should we try to, what should we add in a couple of last minute surprises, or do you feel like it's like, hey man, you guys have done
Dude,
what
it's
you've
loaded,
done, and
man. It's
yeah,
loaded. I
thanks.
don't I wouldn't even know, what to ask for, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. It's
that's good. I'm glad.
yeah,
That's a
no,
great response.
it's pretty
I'll pay. I'll
fantastic.
pay.
And
I'll Venmo you later off
yeah.
air.
Speaking of that, uh,
Yeah,
can I show you something that I'm super proud of, even though I
sure.
had zero to do with it. I'm super
Yeah.
proud of this. So I'm gonna show this on the screen. So this looks like, you can see this, right? So
Yep.
this looks like an ordinary Furnace Fest flyer here with
Yep.
the
It
bands
does.
throughout the 3 days. So I'm gonna bring the same picture up here, and there's a gentleman circled in this photo, which
No way.
just happens to be me in the photo.
Oh, dude, that's incredible. That's so crazy. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm gonna open it up on my screen right now and just make sure that you didn't actually go in
it's not
and
photoshopped,
and
other
Photoshop
than the red
yourself.
circle,
I can confirm you did not
other
Photoshop
than
your
the
face in the shot. That's
it's hilarious because this photo, like this little
wow.
cropped image here, is used in
Yeah.
like a
All of
ton
our
of like
yeah.
everything, right? A ton of
Yep.
publicity. And
No
I
way,
must have
dude.
looked at this 100 times before I saw myself in it.
That's so
Um,
funny,
but
dude.
anyway,
That's
I
well,
feel
hey
like
man,
I'm
I feel like that's Furnace Fest, like little Easter eggs for everybody. And I wanted to make sure you got some love out of the deal. So that's
man,
hilarious, man. What a
man, I appreciate it. You know,
yeah.
how many people do you think are going to come to Furnace Fest just because of that picture? Just
Oh,
because I'm on
I
there?
mean,
I mean,
tens of thousands. There's no
tens of
telling. Yeah, it's gonna
thousands.
it's gonna be ridiculous. We're gonna have to hire more city police to hold them back. It's gonna require like the riot squad. It's
Gonna
gonna be
be,
crazy.
yeah. No, it's crazy. Yeah, well, no, but I know it wasn't intentional, but
That's
thanks for letting me be a part of
yeah,
it. Yeah.
that's incredible. That is so funny. Well, we're working on one of the I guess one of the surprises. It's not necessarily related exclusively to this year's Furnace Fest, but we're working on a 200-page coffee table photo book
Mm,
with unoriginal vinyl who are just, they're just so insanely uh they're just gifted, like really really good at what they do and bringing
yeah.
packaging to life at a high level in a very um what's the right word, very professional but very attention to detail, kind of way. So that's cool. So there's a lot of, so my hunch is that you will probably find yourself in at least one, if not many, of the photos, because it kind of encompasses all of the five Furnace Fest years, to cover a lot of ground. So yeah, hopefully
Oh man.
you're on every single page. That was my goal anyway.
That was the goal, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Just want to give the people what they want, right? Yeah.
right, right. We
Yeah.
have to. It's called that's how you know you're doing festival promoting well. Every single human's gotten exactly what they wanted out of
Yeah.
the lineup, and the experience. So
It's super reasonable. It's a super
yeah,
reasonable request.
of course,
Well,
absolutely.
no, that's super cool that you guys are doing that. It's awesome. And
Yeah,
man,
thanks.
it's just so crazy. The lineup is killer. It's just it's pretty incredible. And And I know it's kind of getting close to that crunch time season, but, how do you feel yeah, my buddy just asked about royalties. Do I
Oh,
get,
nice.
if I
Yeah.
if more than 7 people show up to Furnace Fest and express that they came just because they saw my photo, maybe we can talk a
Yeah,
royalty deal,
exactly. Oh,
but
dude,
anyway,
for all 10,000 plus people, yeah, you
all
can
10,000 plus, yeah.
we'll give you 90% of the face value of the ticket.
Man, just
It'll
give
be a
it to me all in Doge
Bitcoin.
or,
Yeah, Doge.
yeah,
Nice.
Bitcoin,
Oh, dude,
anything
we're
but Luna.
so yeah. Oh man, were you in Luna?
I wasn't, man, I wasn't,
Oh
thankfully.
man, praise God. You're
Were
amazing. Dude, I
you?
was yes, Luna was my biggest holding.
I thought I remember you telling me that last time you were here, and I was
Yeah,
thinking about
man.
you, I was like, I don't
Yeah,
know
I
what
feel
happened to
bad because
Chad.
I had a lot. I feel like the lesson that I learned in over the last year in the crypto world is that I was an idiot for
Sure, me too.
buying into the idea that hodling was a smart move.
Mm,
And I think I think that the hodl idea is actually just like maybe if you really do have like a 5 to 10 year perspective and you really don't care if your account 10x's and then a few months later goes right back to where you started or goes even lower than where you started. You know, if somehow you truly don't mind that happening, and you have maybe an unlimited amount of money to just buy dips all the time and just
right,
keep adding, and you're like, oh man, I'm stacking Cardano like it's going out of style for the next 20
sure.
years because someday it's going to be worth, I don't know, $18 a token or something, then I guess hodling probably does make sense. But had I just looked at all this from the perspective of a trader or just a normal
Mhm.
business transaction, like I bought a vinyl, and little did I know, but that vinyl increased by 10 times what I bought it for. Like
Yeah,
maybe I ought to sell it, and take my wife out on a nice date, like
mhm.
take my family on a vacation because I had several vinyl that increased, by 20%. So yeah, dude, I got destroyed. I had to in full disclosure once again, I lost a lot of money on Luna, and I had put a huge chunk of our kind of like savings into that project, and for the longest time I looked like the smartest investor on the planet because it just kept going,
Right,
and even
right.
when it dipped, it still. I was able to buy those dips, and I just watch it go right back up, and I again just kind of pat myself on the back. Chad, your first year in crypto, like man, you've killed it. You've proven just how well we can do it all
Yeah,
this. And then of course 2 weeks or whatever it was happened 2 weeks ago happened. um and I watched, I mean, at first I was just like buying the dip mode and I was like, this is awesome, this is great, just
wow.
buying more, and then at about like the $50 mark, I was like, dude, this feels really off. This is
Mm,
this is moving
it's
so
too fast.
quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is wrong. And I wish that as soon as I had that like gut reaction that I would have sold everything, pulled it all out. But I didn't do that until it went down to about $25. So I lost about
mhm,
my average buy-in was probably about $50. So I lost about half of it. I basically
mhm.
lost about $25,000 on that Luna trade, and that Luna hodl.
Yeah,
Um, and so that night, it was like a Monday. I think I did that Monday morning or Monday afternoon, and I sold all of it, and which I told myself I would never do. I was going to hodl Luna forever, and
mm,
sold all of it. I moved. I thankfully had the foresight to move that money quickly out of um, where I had it in the Terra ecosystem, and I moved it over to KuCoin, and I transferred it into USDC because there was a lot of there's a lot of FUD about USDT at the time, and like that was
Right.
beginning to depeg, and so it just felt
Yep. It's
like
crazy,
dude,
dude.
the whole world's about to come down, and maybe USDC will be the one. But I swapped it back into Voyager, um, where I knew I could very easily get it back. I could get it out of Voyager and back into a bank account.
Yeah.
So because it just felt so like, and then I watched it, plummet from 25 to like, 0.00,
Yeah, man.
and then I bought that dip because I was like, I'm gonna put
Like,
$100
why not?
into
Yeah.
Luna. Why
Like
not? And now I own
yeah.
like over 3 million old Luna. And
And do you
anyway,
own it on Voyager,
well, I
or is
do,
it
but I
somewhere
don't.
else?
Yeah, no, I do own those. I own the old ones on Voyager, and so far they haven't. You can't do anything with it. It's just like
Yeah.
stuck.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because I ended up buying a small bag too when it was well, I mean, it's still super low, but,
Yeah,
at that super like, it's like 0.0000 whatever it is,
right,
and it's, like, stuck there, and I don't know if it'll just ever open up, because they've actually changed the name, like, it's like a
right.
Luna, yeah, what is it, Luna Classic now or whatever it
Yeah,
is, so I don't know how all that
long.
works, it might just be, it wasn't a lot of
No,
money,
it'll
but,
it'll they'll
in my
I'm
case, but
confident they'll eventually figure it out. I don't know why it's taking them so long, but, it's just one of those things. So, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I guess now I'm kinda I with tears in my eyes, I admitted to my family that I'd lost a lot of money, on Luna, and I felt really guilty. I felt really ashamed. One of the reasons is for me, it's like, and this kind of ties into the whole kingdom and like God, Jesus, how I met Jesus and all that. And one of my dreams, which I know is not mine alone, but one of my dreams has been to utilize crypto as a means of kingdom advance. And so,
mhm,
how do I help people all over the world, that many of which I'm connected to in missions, through there I mean, DeFi for a second there felt so promising, like yield
mhm,
farming and all things. I mean, everything crypto for a season just was like, this is it. Like, this is how I will crack the code on
yeah,
supporting people in missions and supporting God's work around the world, without having to go go become like a festival promoter that does 25 festivals a year, like it's,
mhm,
um and so I think that there was a lot of hope and a lot of kind of like dreaming and spiritual ambition tied up with the Luna as a project, specifically because it was the one that made the most sense to me from an entire ecosystem, how I could do that. And
yeah,
now I'm like just back to the drawing board. I've had to resurrender all that to God and just cry out to him, and first of all apologize, because I feel like
hmm,
I lost, money that wasn't really meant that wasn't really those weren't really like, yes, they were my funds. I wasn't borrowing money from someone, but I felt like those, like that specific project was meant for much greater, uh purpose and use. And so it was like a double whammy of like,
sure,
like a
sure.
crypto 1 2, like,
Yeah, man.
but man, I'm like I'm still here. I'm probably more invested now than ever. I started, let's see. I started reading this book. I
Uh-huh.
it'd be awkward for me to grab the other two, but there's two others that I'm reading that are much bigger. Um and I really have just kind of gone back to the place of wanting to learn, and treating all this, instead of as a long-term investor, treating it um, as a variety of times, uh, trader, kind of view, and
Yeah.
some, not to say that that I'm not interested
Sure.
in holding some stuff longer term, but I will never, as long as it's up to me, hold on to something in the crypto market with the idea that this is going to forever go up. And I just think,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
even though people can make the argument with Bitcoin that it might infinitely scale because of its depreciating, tokenomics and stuff, I still, I don't know. It's like you kind
Yeah.
of have to find a perfect world in order for that kind of scenario to play out. And I don't
Yeah.
think we're ever going to be in a perfect world that's free of war and that's
Yeah.
free of inflation and that's free of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think Bitcoin's great, it's hard. It's
Sure.
hard for me to imagine that by 2030 it's going to be
Right.
worth $1 million a
Right.
token. It's like,
Right.
maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe.
like I think Luna proved that to us, right? That like ultimately you can make all the predictions you want, but ultimately nobody knows because not a single person on the planet saw that coming other than maybe if there were people, behind it pulling strings that actually are the ones responsible for tanking
Right.
it or
For
whatever.
bringing it
But like
down, yeah.
no
Yeah.
investors saw that coming. Like it just
No.
wasn't one of those things. Like nobody thought that it was gonna be that catastrophic that quickly. And so, it's just one of those things. It doesn't. No one can predict this stuff. And I think, like you're saying, I think the times when I've lost money, it's probably because I was too attached to the particular project and just not wanting to let it go, or wanting to hold
Yeah.
on to it, and not really thinking like an investor, but kind of having my emotions a little bit too wrapped up in
Sure.
it or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So.
absolutely. And dude, that was me through and through with Luna. I loved that project. I loved the
Mhm.
team. I loved all the community. It was just very, um it was very easy to love, and it was, yeah, better than being buried in the ground, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not get buried in the ground. So,
Yeah.
and I do know that somehow God's gonna bring a redemption story through all this. I don't know exactly what that will look like or how exactly that will happen, but but yeah, I'm excited to watch how he does that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, man, shifting gears a little bit. I came across your book. I didn't know that you had written a book, and it was, I
Oh,
guess, a
cool.
few years ago, right? But I came
Yeah.
across your book, 1000 Risks.
Yep.
Um, and the subtitle there is "Fighting Fear for an Awesome Awkward Life with Jesus." That's super cool. I was so I started reading your book. I literally just found it, and so I haven't
That's
been able
awesome.
to finish it yet. But
Sure.
man, I'm absolutely loving it. And I just want to say that opening section where you kind of wrote that letter to people reading the book that are not necessarily Christ followers.
Mhm.
I felt like that was such a simple, honest, and beautiful way of presenting the gospel. It was just so cool because it was so from your heart, and you're such a real and just genuine and authentic guy anyway. And the way that you talk and share about Jesus, you talk about him like he's a true friend. And I think
Yeah.
I think most Christians would say that Jesus is their friend. Like, you know what I mean? I think especially for people like me who grew up in the church. I grew up in children's church, and people asked me who my best friend was. I would say Jesus, like that kind of thing. And we kind of have that ingrained in the way that we think about God and stuff like that. But when it
True.
comes to actually relating to Jesus in daily life, just in our walk with him and our relationship with him, I don't know how many believers, how many of us actually relate to him that way, like he really is our closest friend. And
Yeah.
that he really looks at us that way as well, that we're his friends, and that there's this friendship and just daily intimacy. And I wonder, how many believers miss out on that just because of maybe religious mindedness or some weird ideas or
Mhm.
condemnation or whatever it might be. And I love the fact that even in when you're talking to in this section of the book where you're explaining this book is essentially written or geared toward people who have a relationship with God. But for anybody who's reading this that doesn't, or doesn't know the Lord yet, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. And the way that you presented the gospel really just coming from your heart. I thought that it was so profound, it was so simple, and it was so loving. It just came from this really just genuine place of love and compassion. And as I'm reading, I'm like, you know what? If God's people learn to present the gospel in this way, where it's real and authentic, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna just kind of open the door for you to encounter the Lord for yourself, because He's going to show Himself to you.
Yeah.
I just think we would be able to attract so many more people. And so anyway, I'd love to get your backstory, man, and a little bit about how you met Jesus, because I'm sure that the way that you met the Lord and you began this journey, this adventure with Jesus, as I call it, like the way that this kind of started for you, I would imagine that that has to do a lot with the way that you think about God
Mm.
today and the way that you present Him to other people, whether believers, non-believers, whatever. And so, can you share a little bit about just how you kind of got started on this journey of giving your life to the Lord and giving your life away for the Lord?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I guess the starting point is that it's easier to talk about crypto than it is to talk about Jesus and going back because of the age in which we're alive. You know, the cultural challenges all around us, the division that exists between people of faith and people who have either come out of faith or no longer, carry any kind of Christian or spiritual label, or just have nasty feelings towards any kind of spiritual, but especially Christian viewpoint. And I think I guess it kind of it does tie in. And I'm sorry, I feel kind of guilty. I should have probably shared this with the Furnace Fest community after all, because we ended up talking a lot about Furnace Fest, and this does tie in. But anyway, the I think that from the beginning, I grew up in a household that was with parents who were really committed to the gospel, to the point where they were willing to move our family in the 80s, the early 80s, overseas to work in full-time missions. And so I grew up as a full-time missionary kid that lived in
Mm,
the Caribbean and in South America. And so it's weird because it's like I don't, even though I grew up in that context, I think it's both like blessing and curse kind of
hmm,
coming together, because on one hand, it's like I knew about, it's like I should consider myself insanely blessed because I knew about the story of Jesus, and I knew about the Bible, and even read the Bible, and I went, like you said, I went to Sunday school. I did some of that stuff, but then I very quickly found myself running away from anything that spelled faith or Christianity in the
yeah.
slightest. And I found myself just not being able to connect with Christianity as a cultural expression, and a communal expression, because I was kind of living in a missionary bubble. Most of my friendships were either tied to that or somehow connected there. And I guess for whatever reason, it just yeah, I just struggled to see anything other than hypocrisy and
Mm,
judgmentalism and a critical kind of outlook on others, and just didn't it none of it just seemed very inspiring, to be honest. It
mm,
felt kind of, I don't know, just kind of whatever, blah. But
hmm,
thankfully, even through all of that, and especially going down roads where I began exploring other religions and other perspectives, and where I began realizing how much drugs helped me just enjoy life and friends and everything, and just kind of being a teenager. I think through that, it's there's still I still came to a point where where the narrative or the plot line of who Jesus is as the Bible describes him and his life on earth is what I couldn't get away from the fact, and I still can't get away from the fact anytime I open up scripture and begin reading, I just have to say, dude, WTF, like, what human would have written this? Like, are you
Right.
serious? Like, I've read a lot of books, and that's not to. I take that back. I've read a few books. Like, I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I just said. That could have come across as very arrogant and very kind of like, like self-righteous, but I read a lot of books, and like
I have many
I'm
leather-bound
yeah, I'm
books.
some
Yeah.
impressive philosopher professor working at Yale, like I don't even know where Yale
Sure.
is, let alone, could bro down with
Dude,
a
where is Yale?
philosopher. I think it's in the New England area actually. I think it's somewhere up there, but I don't know for sure. We should
Okay.
Google it. But
There's a lot of smart people up there, I feel like, so it's probably
yeah,
right.
yeah, I do feel like they're like MIT, Yale, Harvard, all those places sound cool, but I don't really know exactly
Yeah.
where they're
The
at. But
old part of America. Yeah.
yeah, old
Yeah.
America. But anyway, all that all that to say, um, no matter what book I've read, I've never come across a book that's read like the Bible, and
Mm.
that what was it just messed with me. It was like the story of Jesus is one that I've never encountered in any other religion or any other philosophy or any other ideal, and it's so hard. Like the story of Jesus is so challenging. It's like it's like, people think, okay, I think one of the struggles that Christianity has right now is that we are the anti everything, we're like the anti, we don't like this, we don't like that, we don't we're just like point out any number of issues in culture and we're pretty much like, yep, don't do that. We don't
Yeah.
back that. We don't support that. Um, and while biblically that we have a strong case maybe for any or all the above, no matter what the kind of the hot topic, hot button is, um, I think that if we actually go deeper, Jesus isn't just calling out lifestyles or points of view, or he's like calling out the deepest part of the human core and saying at the like the essence of everything that you are is helpless
Mm.
and void of hope and incapable or incapable of recognizing how much potential you have, no matter how much you think you get it. And so I guess I just, man, I was challenged by scripture and I was
Yeah.
challenged by his story. And even though there's, 1000 Risks as a book, it's a challenge because there's a chapter which you've likely not gotten to yet that deals with my addiction to pornography and my addiction
Mhm.
to lust. And I'm convinced, dude, now having written that book years ago, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago now, but a few years ago.
I think it said 2017 was it was
Okay,
released
yeah, that sounds,
sometime,
yeah, I was
so
gonna say that, yeah, so 5 years, that sounds right. Even though when I wrote it, I had no idea that I would embark on a journey that would bring me the closest I ever have to leaving my faith in Jesus. Um,
Hmm.
I feel a
Yeah.
little bit of, kind of embarrassment and a little bit of awkward, my own awkward, because I wish I was the author that could say, dude, I wrote the super inspiring spiritual book and
Mm.
everybody loved it and changed their lives
Yeah.
because of it. And yet I've struggled more with faith in the last few years than ever before. But there's a
Mm.
chapter that I wrote. What I am super thankful about
Yeah.
is that God gave me grace to be transparent, and that's a gift He's given me, and I know that, and I don't want to abuse it, but I also don't want to not use it. I don't want to be me, I don't want to like put on a pretend Chad because I know that that doesn't help anybody, and that's not true to
Yeah,
form
man.
either.
Yeah. It's
So I
huge.
wrote a book on pornography and lust and how much lust has held me back from
Mm.
spiritual growth, but really just, I would say, emotional development, relational connection, all kinds of areas. And maybe one day, I don't know for sure, but I think one day I'm going to find out that God used those pages more than any other, specifically to bless and minister to my life
Mm.
by causing readers who came across that chapter to just pause. Maybe they just said a split second, like, God, please help this guy. Like, man, this guy's hurting. And we can feel the hurt coming off the pages, so help him. That's, that's my
Yes.
my sneaky my hunch is that there's a Holy Spirit ambush that was dropped upon me by way
Yeah,
of
bro.
of all the readers that just were like, God, please help him.
Yeah.
And so I've been through, and I still am a part of a SA group where I'm actively a part of recovering from Sexaholics Anonymous is what SA stands for. Uh, but it's a group that helps people overcome addiction, and I learned through all this that I've been an addict, that my drug of choice has not been alcohol. I actually still enjoy alcohol in moderation, and I would drink a beer or a couple of beers or a nice cocktail with anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere, and not for a second think, what if I had six? Maybe I should
Right.
just get plastered, but
Yeah.
that's not like to pat myself on the back, like, yay, I'm a great social drinker, and I could really enjoy a double IPA with the best of them, and not take it over the top. It's like, it's really just to say that that wasn't that point of potential problem
Mhm.
area wasn't the one for me that hung me up, but the female body and objectifying female bodies, specifically
Mm.
through the use of pornography, or even mental visual stimulation and fantasy, and allowing myself to drink in, like what we would call in recovery, drinking in a beautiful person who is not mine to consume.
Yeah.
It's, I'm violating that
Right.
person and their
Right.
dignity, and their beauty, even if they're the hottest person on the planet, whoever for each of
Yeah.
us the hottest person on the planet is. It's still wrong, I believe, not only from a biblical standpoint, but even as a human standpoint,
Yeah.
to objectify them. And I spent 30 plus years objectifying people that I, of course,
Mm.
you most of some people that I knew, but most of people I didn't. And it was just such an ingrained part of my behavior that I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think twice about the fact that I was looking twice. Like, one of the phrases I love in recovery the most is that the first look is on God and the second look is on you. And
Come on.
it's like you see someone
Yeah.
that you find attractive, um, and you can't help but observe that they're attractive, and that's fine. They are who they are, and they can't, they don't need to go change their hairstyle or their body type or their clothing or whatever,
Sure.
because you have an issue.
Right.
It's like, that's not their problem. You're the problem. And
Right.
so it's like recognizing that I'm the problem, and no one else at this
Yeah.
table of life has the issue. I'm the issue, and I've got to deal with me, and I've got to deal with my
Mhm.
distractions and my hangups and my
Yeah.
addictions. And from that point of writing um, 1000 Risks, I had no clue. I envisioned when I wrote that book that God was going to launch me into a multi-decade, massive, like Billy Graham meets Todd White
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
style, like
Yeah.
global evangelism. I just thought, man, we're going to take the world by storm in being able to reach people one person at a time, just by loving them and caring for them and going above and beyond to treat them exceptionally well. and modeling Jesus for them. And little did I know that actually the book was going to be like my, uh, I don't know, like my recipe or God's recipe for heart surgery, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, it's interesting, man. There's so much that I want to circle back to in what you said. I'll see how many things I can remember to touch back on. But no, man, that's so good. First of all, and I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate your just transparency and the way that you are just open about this and about your struggle, because I really think that that's it's helpful, man. It's helpful for people
Mm,
to know that they're not alone.
yeah.
It's so helpful for people to know that there's other people that have struggled with the things that they're struggling with. And I think back, and it was a number of years ago. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, but I struggled with what I consider, at the time I didn't know, of course, but I do look back and I consider it to be a pornography addiction. I don't think it
Mm,
was just a pastime. I think it was
yeah.
something that had control over my life, because I remember being like sitting in school, and the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm just like, the only thing I'm thinking about is getting home and what I'm going to look at on the computer,
Totally.
and like, what I'm going to do. And it was
Yep.
very controlling, to the point where I loved the Lord and I had a relationship with God, but I had this other aspect of my life where I felt like like I couldn't just break it. And as much as I tried on my own to just say no, like I'm not going to do that. I know it's wrong. I'm not supposed to do that. I would always find myself just being pulled back, into that place. And
Yeah.
I do feel like there was definitely an addictive pattern there. uh, but also, as you were sharing from your perspective on how Jesus really became real to you, that I guess there was something where you had grown up in a very gospel centered home, and you were a missionary kid and all of that, but there was a lot of stuff that to your perception just seemed like it wasn't really authentic, and it was more, maybe it was more, I can't remember exactly how you said this, if you said it like this or not, but there was more, maybe, emphasis on the things you can't do,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of times in the body of Christ, like, we can make our relationship with God so much about the do's and the don'ts,
Yeah.
and there's something that I really wanted to circle back to, because I wrote it down, because it was really powerful to me. You made this statement in your book. You said, Jesus isn't threatening hell so you'll embrace him. He's embracing you so that you'll threaten hell.
Mm,
And I was like, yo, that is a seriously powerful statement, because so often we have this mindset that because we're going through something, because we're struggling with something, a sin issue, and whatever it is, that because we're dealing with something, that God is like threatening us.
mm,
Or that God is upset with us, God's unhappy
yeah.
with us. Man, like, I can't tell you how many years of my life I spent feeling like I was constantly losing my
Same.
salvation, because of thoughts going through my head, because of stuff that
Yeah.
I was looking at, because of words that were coming out of my mouth, because of bad behavior, because of different things. And it was craziness, because the whole time I had a love for God throughout the whole process. But I feel like I would run and hide from God, because I was so concerned about this other side of things, feeling like, incorrectly feeling like God was upset with me because I was struggling with something that I couldn't control,
Mm,
or that I even that I wasn't ready to
sure.
release fully, or that I was just, struggling with, or didn't know how to process, or whatever. But it was like anything short of perfection, to me, just felt like God's angry with you.
Yeah.
And so I had this mentality that God is cruel, that God is frustrated, that God's mad, that God's got his arms folded and he's just got his back toward me, or he's angry. That was my paradigm of my heavenly Father for such a long time. And it shifted, kind of, it wasn't like a one day to the next kind of thing, but gradually it shifted as I began to recognize, scriptures in the Bible that talk about the face of God shining down on us, and
Mm,
his joy, and the favor of his face that's toward us. And I started to look at my heavenly Father, not in a way that I'm considering him angry with me all the time because I didn't do life perfectly, but that his love and his affection and his joy and his favor and his grace is actually toward me, that I belong to him, and his desire to root those things out of my life that are not honoring to him. It's not because he's trying to take my fun away. It's not because he's mad at me because I'm doing those things. It's because he wants me to experience freedom. He wants me to experience more of him. And ultimately, at the end of the day, these things, they hold me back and they keep me in bondage, and they keep me in a place where I'm not experiencing the fullness of what God has for me. And
Mm.
so anyway, man, just
No,
wanted to
that's
say
huge.
I appreciate you so much for sharing. And yeah,
Sure.
man, like as far as if getting a little bit deeper into that conversation on even just pornography addiction, and because I don't know, man, is that something? Do you find that is that something that I feel like in things that I've read recently, it seems to me that even in secular settings, that it's becoming more and more accepted or mainstream to call pornography addiction a thing. Do
Mm,
you think that that's the case? I don't know if that's
mm.
across the board. Like, is it something that's been accepted as something that's actually an addiction,
Yeah,
that
an
it's a
addiction.
problem, or do you think that it's, not really there yet?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't. It's hard for me to know how we would define who deems lust an addiction. Like because I think that on one hand, I think if you ask like an average person, younger person on the planet with a smartphone, if they
Mm,
thought that viewing something on Pornhub or some other, pornographic site was addictive, and if the behavior of self-sex that comes along with viewing that material, if that was addictive behavior, I'm pretty sure that although, again, this is kind of just a assumption, but my assumption is that they just kind of laugh at you like, what do you mean it's
right.
addictive? I do think from more of like a medical or like a psychological field vantage point, that it's very the research is extremely clear that pornography use is even more addictive than cocaine use. So I mean,
Mm,
it's like if all of our phones had little lines of coke that we could somehow access for a quick hit, uh, how long would it take for us to just be like, "Yo, Coke's cool." Like, I mean, yeah,
right.
there's some side effects,
Yeah.
but it's right here. Like, I love
Right. It's
Coke, and
so yeah.
makes me feel good, and it kind of takes away my hard life or
Mm,
whatever. It helps me medicate. So I think in the Christian world, it's that we would probably all answer that we know pornography is bad because Jesus said, not to look lustfully upon a woman.
mhm.
And there's a lot of, so many Bible passages in scripture that talk about lust and not necessarily pornography or self-sex, um, specifically, but address the topic of sexual immorality repeatedly. So, um, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, 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 you're good. I was gonna, just as a follow-up, like, what do you think is, some of the results of that become particularly destructive? So if, somebody who is addicted to pornography, or maybe we don't even necessarily, yeah, I don't know where you draw the line between this is just something that I do and this is an addiction. Like, I don't know where that I'm sure that
Yeah.
line's blurry. It's not a day and night kind of thing. But what are some of the things that come out of it, that the way that it actually affects somebody's life, whether you want to share from your experience or just from, what you've seen by kind of, diving into some of this stuff, the destruction that can happen to somebody's life as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a combination of my own life and the lives
Mhm.
of people that I journey with. I know that I think the greatest for me, probably the greatest curse that lust has delivered to me is an inability to be and feel present and fulfilled in relationship. So
Wow.
especially with those closest to me, because and it kind of tied to that, it prevents me from feeling emotionally and expressing emotionally everything that's under the hood of my heart. And so in my marriage, in my family, in my closest relationships, it's similar to what you described. It's like it's so easy for me to be in my mind fantasizing over some scene that turns me on, or some
Mhm.
uh thing that some person I'd like to be with, um versus being able to fully engage in a healthy and normal way with the people I love most, without kind of like having, like, being at the movie theater of the mind at the same time. That's how
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
argue it works, is like I'm at the different, and I do think it's possible for someone to occasionally view pornography and not necessarily have an addiction to it. The
Mhm.
commitment that I've made, and that people within SA have made, is to withstand. I don't know why I'm struggling with that word,
Abstain?
but abstain. Thanks. I was like, I know that this is not coming out. My inner Harvard is just not working right now,
Yeah.
but abstain from viewing pornography, abstain from self sex, and abstain from living in a place of fantasy.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean anybody does it well. It doesn't mean anyone's perfect at it. Nobody is, but that's the goal. It's like the goal is to live life without requiring the drink that is lust.
Mhm.
So I think, I mean, I know of friends who have lost their marriages. I nearly lost my marriage over this. Thankfully, I in
Wow.
the end did not, and I have seen God completely reconcile my marriage and
Mm.
reignite a genuine love affair between me and my
Hmm.
wife Beth. And
Yeah.
I've seen Him restore my family, and give me grace with my kids and friendships and all that. I've seen Him reconstruct all that. But I know that there are many cases where that's not the outcome. Like my kind of like addiction story has a really pleasant outcome, but for many people, I personally know of someone who's in jail for 6 years related to this. I know of stories of people who have committed suicide related to this, of um, people doing I mean, the level, like we call within SA, we call we call the addiction the disease of insanity, because it really is what it is. Like
Mm.
some of the things that when
Mm.
you begin, and I'm not at liberty to share individual personal stories from other people,
Sure.
but some of the stuff that you hear, you're just like, dude, holy. I mean, like, you did what? Like, you did that. And and then you have to pause and be like, wait, but what have I done? Like, oh man,
Right.
like I've done some crazy stuff too. And like the level of risk that some of us, myself included, have been willing to go, it's almost like we're unable or unable, incapable of seeing the edge of the cliff that we're just like walking along, like it's
Yeah.
like we're on a sunny summer path in just frolicking in the English countryside, with the
Yeah,
queen
man.
and hanging out with
Yeah.
everybody, just like there's no worries in the world. It's just smoking a pipe
Right.
with C.S. Lewis, wandering through the British countryside, drinking a mild ale at the local pub. It just, everything's great, but
Man,
it's
you
like right there,
you get
there's
in
like
You get an A+ for analogies. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks, dude. There's a cliff. There's, I want to call it a fucking cliff because that's what it is. Like
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
like if only we could understand, like, dude, you're gonna die. Like you are
Yeah.
gonna fall off this thing and you're gonna die. But instead, we're just like, just like having the time of our lives. And I think that was me. It's like, and I think God had to shake me and humble
Mm,
me and bring me to a point lower than I've ever been because I was in danger of death. And thankfully the mercy and the grace of the gospel is that he took death for me, not just the eternal permanent hell versus heaven kind of death, but also the temporal and still super important right now kind of death. And so I'm here, I'm alive, I'm smiling, I'm regretting the fact that I called the cliff a bad word, cliff. But I'm alive, and you might have to edit it depending on your audience, but hey, I'd rather get someone's attention, if that's what it took, and
yeah.
and be real than whatever. But I just think for me, it's like God gave me a fresh opportunity to have the awareness that I was on the edge, and I was like Dan said, I was buried in the ground
Mm,
and I was dying. Slowly the air was
wow.
being sucked out of my lungs,
Wow.
and I was allowing it to be sucked out of my lungs. I was like, this feels great. Having the air sucked out of my lungs feels great. I love this feeling. As long as I'm sexually stimulated, this is a great feeling.
Yeah.
And that's how perverted the disease is.
Wow, man. Well, hey, listen, it's we're coming up on an hour and I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you for sharing just to kind of maybe end on a little bit of a positive
A
note.
happier
Yeah.
note.
Well, yeah. No, I mean,
you,
again, like I love this, man. I love what you're sharing, and it's super helpful. But just to kind of end on a little bit of a positive note, like
yeah.
what do you? Because I know that you work with people through addiction recovery, and you journey with people, and you've been on your own journey as well. But like, what would you say to people, to somebody who is struggling, whether it's with a porn addiction or any other kind of addiction? What's something that you like to remind people, and even as like for somebody that might be dealing with something that they don't see a way out, or they don't see how
Mhm.
I know it gets very overwhelming when you look at where you want to be in relation to where you are now, and you can say there's like 87,000 steps that I need to take just to get there, and we can look at that and be totally overwhelmed. And I think that feeling of overwhelmed, that feeling of hopelessness, it leads to more of just kind of perpetuating the cycle that we're in. When you develop that state of hopelessness to say, I can't figure out how to get myself out of this. I've tried so many times. I've tried this. I've tried that. I've been prayed for this many times, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And I can't seem to break the cycle. So you can, I think, eventually settle into a state of despair where you just say, I'm not even going to try. It's kind of like
Sure.
throw your hands up, forget about it, and just
Yeah,
let life
it
happen
becomes the
to
new
you at that
normal.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So just what's something, man, that you like to either say or share with people, or something like that, to just kind of maybe help them shift their perspective a little bit from the despair of where they are to recognizing that there is hope.
Yeah, that's good, man. I appreciate you bringing that up. I think one of the challenges when you've gone through years of recovery is that it's too easy to kind of stay there, but that's only there to help, I think, each of us understand how significant our stories are and how much God this is the greatest work of God to redeem people from destruction, to take them from the edge of the cliff and actually put them on a path that is the British countryside, like
Yeah.
that is his plan. That is what he does. And he's willing to allow us to get extremely close to the edge, which is really just our own um, lack of judgment, that he's like, all right, I will let you execute lack of judgment, but I'm going to help you. And what I care about most is helping you become whole and to be restored. And so there is hope. There's all, I mean, my story is 100% a story of hope. but it's been a very hard road, and it is recovering from an addiction or from a mental condition or depression or any kind of emotional struggles or trauma or
Yeah.
anything that happens to people that where we've been hurt, and are kind of struggling through the process of what it means to be healed again, is to me the reason why the gospel is true. It's the reason why Jesus matters, because there's the possibility, not only the possibility, but the probability of a restoration turnaround in our lives that we could never have produced on our own. And so I
Mm.
guess if it's, if it's someone specifically dealing with this issue, um, SA.org is a great resource. And I would encourage, whether it's this issue or anything else, to begin by reaching out to others and finding even one other person that you can confide in and that you can entrust with your story. And then maybe that grows into someone else, or maybe it becomes a therapist, maybe it becomes a group, maybe it ends up being many people. But starting somewhere and not keeping the worst or what you hate most about yourself to yourself, because um, in the end, I think the things that we hate most about ourselves is what God tends to use loudest to reach others, to connect with others.
Yeah, man.
um, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. There can be so much stigma, I think, attached to struggles and addictions and things like that that can cause us to just kind of keep it to ourselves and not be open and honest and not share it with somebody that can help us, and not wanting to admit, weakness.
Yeah.
And there's so much strength in just in that. There's so much strength in admitting weakness, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much
Sure.
strength in
There
just
is.
saying, whether it's confiding in a friend, as you said, or getting, maybe more formal help from from therapy, or from a group, an organization like SA or something like that you're talking about. But yeah, just I would just encourage anybody, like, however that looks for you, that's something that you have to work out, in your life. But don't be don't be bogged down by the stigma of, admitting that you are struggling, or, what are people going to think of me, or does this mean that I'm a failure if if I admit this? Because it's just simply not. And there's definitely times, and I love when this happens, where it's just a supernatural, like, immediate kind of a shift and a breakthrough.
Hmm.
And that's definitely possible, where God can
Sure.
just take that thing, take that desire, that addiction's just like supernaturally broken in an instant. But even if it's a process of walking it out, which I think is the process that most people, the majority of people, end up walking through, even when it's a process, it's still supernatural. It's still the relying on the grace of God through that process. And whether it's in an instant, or if it takes years, just know that the grace of God is available to you, and He's there for you, and He fights for you, not
Yeah.
against you, because you're struggling with something. And ultimately, He just wants you to be free.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well,
100%. Well said.
Mr. Johnson, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for your
You
time.
too, Duke. Thank you.
I'd still love to do it again at some point, man. I just really
Sure.
enjoy talking to you, and I appreciate your heart, your openness, and transparency and honesty. And I just love it, man. I
Yeah.
think that
Same.
it's so helpful for people, man. I really do. I think it's really helpful, and I just appreciate your just boldness and bravery in the way that you are open about your own life and all of that. So,
Well,
yeah, man.
it's an honor, bro, and it's thankfully we get to have a conversation that others might find something good, in, but it's an encouraging and uplifting conversation for my own soul, if nothing else. So that to me, that's like it's worth it, regardless of what God does with it from here. And yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity and taking the time. And I'm excited to now never look at a Furnace Fest poster the same way. So,
Right?
yeah, or Furnace Fest, little a little flyer or something. I'm gonna forever be like, oh wow, there's Duke. That's incredible. It is pretty
Uh,
amazing though, because there out of all these people, you can really only see two faces, and one of these
right.
two faces is yours.
Yeah, that
You
other
can
dude, I'm not sure. I don't know who that other guy is. You can see his face a little bit more clearly than mine,
yeah,
but
he's pretty happy. He's pretty happy that he's not getting smashed by somebody right now is what it looks like.
and dude, I could tell that's from Beloved's set. I could tell
Oh,
based on where
yeah.
I'm standing and what I'm
Okay.
wearing. Like I know that was
That's
from the
incredible.
Beloved set. So
You're like,
that's pretty dope.
that was at 9:19 on Saturday night
Yeah.
at Beloved. No, it's amazing.
Absolutely, man.
Well, I love you, bro. Thank you. Thank you again for
Yeah.
having me.
Love you too, man. No, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming by. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to check out this conversation. Appreciate you guys. If the content was a blessing to you, or maybe challenged you, or helped you think, or something like that, if you'd consider subscribing, sharing, leaving a review, I'd really, really appreciate that. Chad, just before we end, are there any websites or social media or anything like that that you'd point people to?
Oh man, that's a good question. I guess
You
just
don't have to, but I just
yeah, furnacefest.us for all things Furnace Fest. And then for people who are interested in the book, just amazon.com and then 1000
yes.
risks. But yeah, I'm not very active on the social media side of things, unfortunately. So um, yeah, I would. It kind of
Yeah.
feels funny to be like, go to my Instagram, go follow me on Facebook, and but I'm kind
And then
of,
crickets. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Crickets.
it's all good, man. I appreciate that. All right,
Yeah,
man. Take it
thanks.
easy. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you, Duke.